Thank you for your patience again. I apologize that we have extended almost 25 minutes because of our chair, as well as the keynote speaker somewhere. There is some technical glitch with them. They are unable to join. However, we are starting with the session presentations. So I would like to invite moderator to take up the stage, as well as they can start calling up the presentations accordingly. Thank you for your patience again.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. Riya Vasu from the AIESR team. We will now move towards our track C, which includes 11 presenters today. Our first presenter is Dr. Tamilmani Katie and Jazz Evelyn J. from Nehru Memorial College, Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu. Paper is titled The Dynamic Power of Galadriel, Portrayal of Women Empowerment and Leadership in Middle Earth by Tolkien. Ma'am, Dr. Katie, are you present in the panel?
Yes, ma'am. You're present.
Okay.
Good morning.
So,
Good morning.
Good morning. If there is a presentation, you can put it on full screen for visibility.
Yeah, we have done it, ma'am.
You can proceed.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chairperson. We deem it a great honor to be here in the virtual platform as part of the conference organized by Amity University. This is a joint paper written by my research scholar and myself, The Dynamic Power of Galadriel, Portrayal of Women Empowerment and Leadership in Middle Earth by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now I request my research scholar, Jazz Evelyn, to take over the session. Over to you, Jazz.
Thank you so much, sir. Our paper is The Dynamic Power of Galadriel, Portrayal of Women Empowerment and Leadership in Middle Earth by Tolkien. This is a co-authored paper. I'm presenting along with my research supervisor, Dr. Tamilmani Katie, Vice Principal of Nehru Memorial College, Tamil Nadu. So these are the contents of our paper: objective, introduction, methodology, discussion, findings, conclusion, and scope for further research. The objective of our paper first is to identify Galadriel as an icon for all the women in literature, to project Galadriel as empowerment, and also she has a very good leadership quality, to highlight the personal and prophetic power of Galadriel, and to emphasize the gifts of Galadriel. So to introduce our topic, J.R.R. Tolkien is the author of the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, and who is also known as the father of high modern fantasy. So he has created many influential characters, which has also influenced many other authors to write in fantasy genre. So among one such character is Galadriel, and he has produced only a few female characters, and one such character is Galadriel. So she is dynamic and rather complex, complicated character. So the methodology we have applied here is textual analysis, close reading, and qualitative approach. The first, we are going to concentrate on how Galadriel acts as an evolution, as an icon to the women in literature. So she's a powerful cultural icon symbolizing wisdom, grace, and resilience. Initially, she's portrayed as one among the most powerful elves. So she represents the timeless struggle between light and darkness, and with her mythical aura and deep wisdom influencing both characters within the narrative and the audience. So over time, Galadriel has grown beyond her literary origin, becoming a figure of strength and empowerment, and especially for the women in fantasy, literature, and media. Next slide, sir. Next slide, sir. Second thing, we have analyzed the Galadriel as a symbol of women empowerment and leadership. So being an elf, she breaks into gender stereotype to become a powerful emblem of women's rights and leadership goals. Galadriel embodies women empowerment and leadership by representing her strength, wisdom, and resilience in the male-dominated world that is the Middle Earth, which Tolkien has created. As one of the most powerful being in Tolkien's universe, she exercises authority with grace, balancing power and humility. So, one of the most impact seen here is she rejected the One Ring. So, One Ring here is a powerful artifact which rules the Middle Earth. So, upon offering that One Ring, she rejected that One Ring, and this shows her self-restraint, quality of self-restraint and moral clarity, choosing wisdom over domination. And also, Galadriel's fighting spirit defies all expectation about what it means to be a woman in the world created by men. So she does not wait for one's command. She doesn't like to someone to be commanded over, but rather takes her own decision. Next slide, sir. We have concentrated on personal and prophetic power. According to Flager, a prominent and influential author of fantasy genre, he quotes, I quote, Galadriel's prophetic role is not merely passive, it is active, shaping the course of the event, quote unquote. So here the Galadriel shows a change. Whatever she does, whatever task she puts hand into, she changes the course of an event. So everything changes. So she knows that she also has the ability, magical ability to prophesize that going to something that is going to happen in the future. And the prophetic power also defies Galadriel. Her vision in the mirror allows her to see the glimpse of potential figure, giving her a unique insight into fate and destination. So this blend of personal mastery and prophetic vision places Galadriel at the heart of Middle Earth's most pivotal moments. Next slide, sir. Next thing, Galadriel's gift. So she has attained many gifts and also has given gifts to many characters in the novel. So while giving the gifts, she represents herself as a motherly figure and can be seen as a part of motherly care extended over the characters. And one of the gifts is that mithril coat given to Frodo Baggins. So here Frodo Baggins is the protagonist of the novel, and he is given the mithril coat and also a stone called Fillal of Galadriel, which saves him from a lot of danger throughout his journey. So the heroes, she is portrayed as female heroes, not as heroine, but as a hero who is equipped with physical and spiritual, which served many different purposes along her path, which reflects greatness and self-realization. Next slide, sir. Overall, she is portrayed as the queen of the Middle Earth. So there are many limited characters in Tolkien's novel trilogy, but this Galadriel is portrayed as a queen because she rules with wisdom rather than her own strength. Also, she rules with diplomacy, with strength, and being prudent and benevolent leader, but also wise ruler. And Galadriel also changes the gender stereotype of power. Next slide, sir. So the findings of her paper as such are follows. She stands as a role model for all the women in literature. So her power is a symbol of selfless nature, rather a motherly nature. So her choice for standing for her own people, even though she prophesies that Middle Earth is going to be destroyed, she stood for her own people. So she stood beside her own people. This highlights her quality of universal motherhood. And she also stands as an epic figure and also the guardian of the Middle Earth, also known as the secondary world. To conclude our paper, Galadriel's creation. So Tolkien created this character that is very different from other women in the literature during his period. So Galadriel serves as a symbol showing, proving that change can happen anywhere, anytime, even under good leadership. So she says that change is the only thing which is constantly changing. And Tolkien's representation, it represents Galadriel is the key that represents Tolkien's authenticity in the novel trilogy. Next slide, sir. So what could be the scope for our further research in the character Galadriel? So she can be studied through ecofeminist lens, and also secondly, she can be studied under post-colonial perspective, which shows Galadriel character, which allows us to see beyond the surface level, such as power struggles, as an identity formation and resistance. And also a comparative study can be made between media, how the media shows Galadriel and how the textbooks shows Galadriel. So the change can be analyzed and studied. Thank you for allowing us to present our paper, and the session is open for questions.
Ma'am, we will take the questions if they appear in the chat box. So we will wait till the last speaker finishes off with their session, and then we can proceed.
Thank you.
We move on to our next speaker. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, to be a part of our conference. We are extremely honored.
Thank you, ma'am. We feel the same.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is also Dr. Tamilmani KT and Sridipika VS. They are from Nehru Memorial College, Bharati Dasan University, Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu. The paper is titled Gender Trauma and its Psychological Impact in Stephen King's If It Bleeds. Ma'am, are you there connected with us?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
ma'am. Both
Am I
are
audible, ma'am?
available.
Yeah. So you can proceed your time.
Yes.
Yeah, one second, Sridipika.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful opportunity. This is a double delight that you have given us. We presented a paper just now from British literature. Now this is from American literature. This is written by my another research scholar on Stephen King. Over to Sridipika to make the presentation.
Happy morning to all. The title of my paper is Gender Trauma and its Psychological Impact in Stephen King's If It Bleeds. This is a co-authored paper along with my research supervisor, Dr. KT Tamilmani, and myself, Sridipika, a full-time research scholar. Moving on to the objectives of my paper. The paper will investigate how the novella depicts the unique ways women experience trauma, considering societal power dynamics and vulnerabilities that affect their experiences. Secondly, the paper will examine how the novel portrays the psychological effects of the trauma beyond the physical violence, focusing on the protagonist's symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and dissociation. Thirdly, the paper will explore the protagonist's strength and resilience, examining how she copes with the challenges she faces despite her traumatic experiences. Next slide, sir. Moving on to the overview of If It Bleeds. If It Bleeds is a 2020 novella by Stephen King that blends horror with the philosophical exploration of the human psyche. And the novella Holy Gibney is the protagonist who faces both external and internal struggles. And the protagonist experiences the gender-related violence and trauma, which is the central theme that is explored in this novella. And Stephen King work often dwells into the vulnerabilities and scars of his characters in all his works. Next is the relevance of gender trauma in modern literature. Gender trauma is a significant topic in contemporary literature, reflecting the increased cultural awareness of gender differences in trauma experience. And secondly, the King's portrayal of Holy's trauma in If It Bleeds, that explores the psychological consequences of gendered violence by highlighting the importance of considering the gender ethnicity and the social status and understanding the representation of trauma. Next slide. Next is the trauma-informed lens in literary studies. The trauma lens in literary studies focuses on understanding the psychological and the emotional consequences of trauma on individuals and society. Again, the trauma-sensitive reading of the fictional works just help us understand how trauma shapes the character identities, interpersonal dynamics, and resilience. Next slide, sir. Gender and violence, societal power dynamics. Gender and violence in literature is often depicted as the societal constructs that perpetuate the power imbalances and it marginalized women and other groups. The literary representation of the gendered violence can just expose the systematic power imbalances and it critique the societal factors that contribute and exacerbate trauma. Next slide, sir. Psychological, next slide. The psychological impact of trauma perspective. Gender and violence in literature are often depicted as societal constructs that perpetuate power imbalances and it marginalize women and other groups. The literary representation of the gendered violence can just expose uh, systematic power imbalances and critique the societal factors that contribute to and exacerbate trauma. And the psychological impact of trauma is just influenced by the societal views on gender. And the gender expectations can just play a significant role in shaping the psychological outcomes of the female characters, including their symptoms and the coping mechanisms. Next slide, sir. Holy Gibney, a character study. Here, the Holy's childhood trauma, particularly her mother's murder, has a profound and a very lasting impact on her psychological state and character. To talk about Norbury's analysis of trauma, it underscores the significance of the early trauma in shaping the individual's perception and interaction with the world. Then the king's portrayal of Holy Gibney focuses on her transformation and her resilience in the face of trauma. The imagery of the ghost that follows you everywhere emphasize that the ever-present nature of trauma in Holy's life. Next is like considering Holy's past experience, gendered violence, specific incidents and their impact. The novella explores the psychological consequences of the gendered violence by highlighting the importance of considering gender, ethnicity, and social status in understanding the representation of trauma. And here the trauma lens in literary studies focuses on understanding the psychological and emotional consequences of trauma on individuals and society. Next slide, sir. Societal vulnerabilities. Holy as a representation of women's struggles. Holy represents how society often ignores or downplays women's pain, and she struggles to take it seriously by showing how women's trauma is frequently dismissed. And the societal expectations can just make personal trauma worse. Holy tries to be strong instead of being angry or hysterical. King's portrayal criticizes the society's failure to support women, making their trauma just harder to bear. Next slide, sir. Next is a post-traumatic stress disorder in Holy Gibney. The Holy's flashbacks and the constant tension are the signs of PTSD, that is a post-traumatic stress disorder, and she can't escape from her painful memories that she always feels on the edge. Holy avoids certain activities and freezes in new situations just to protect herself from more trauma, and her fear of being hurt again just reflects the PTSD cases and showing how trauma can mentally paralyze someone. Next slide, sir. Anxiety and dissociation, manifestations in Holy's behavior. Holy's anxiety just affects her daily life by making her feel a constant fear and unease, and she struggles to focus and feels tense all the time, which disrupts her ability to function normally. And again, Holy also experiences the dissociation, where she feels disconnected from her surroundings, and if she's observing her life from afar, this detachment helps us to cope with the trauma. A common reaction for trauma, survivors who struggle with controlling their emotions. Next slide, sir. Next is the intersection of gender and psychological responses. Holi's trauma is just intensified by societal expectation that is placed on her as a girl and a caregiver, by reflecting how women are often expected to handle the pain and trauma. Christensen's perspective here just highlights how gender shapes the Holi's psychological state, with women often experiencing the trauma under the weight of the societal expectations. Next slide, sir. Moving on to the conclusion, King's story about the character Holy Gibney shows how women experience trauma that is very different because of their gender. Unlike the other scary stories that usually end sadly, King's story shows that even after bad things happen, people can just remain strong and overcome their struggles. This novella opens up new ways to just study literature by looking at how horror stories can talk about the real problems like mental illness, power differences between men and women, and it just encourages more research on how modern writers show trauma and how women roles in society are changing. Next slide. Thank you.
Madam, we are ready to answer
Thank you
any
so much,
queries.
ma'am. We will be waiting for the last speaker to finish, and by then, if anybody would like to put out questions, so that can be posted in the chat box. Thank you so much for your presentation, sir and ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We now move to our next speaker, Sonia S. Pillai from Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Ernakulam, Kerala. Her paper is titled Culinary Feminism, Revisiting the Recipes of Gendered Kitchen. Sonia ma'am, are you there with us? Sonia S. Pillai. Participants will check karo. Okay, I think Sonia ma'am has still not joined, so we will move to our next participant. And by then, if Sonia ma'am joins, we can get back to her at the end. Our next speaker is Amonika, who's from HPU Shimla. HP Shimla. Her paper is titled The Trauma of Caste, a historical trajectory of experiences, challenges, and triumphs through Dalit women's life writings. Amonika, are you here with us?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Ma'am, is there a presentation you want to use?
No, ma'am, I don't have PPT. I will be using
Okay, ma'am. Okay. You can start now.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. A very good morning to one and all present here. My name is Amonika and I am a PhD research scholar from Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. I feel obliged to provided me this opportunity today to share my thoughts and views on exploring intersections and gender, for which I have chosen Dalit women's life writings and the psychological trauma they are an epitome of. Before I begin, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the esteemed organizers of Amity University, Patna, for providing me this platform to present my paper. Today, I would like to shed some light on the experiences of Dalit women who suffer triply on the intersections of caste, class, and gender. They are considered as Dalit among Dalits, a minority within a minority, and a shadow of the margins. Using the Dalit feminist perspective, the paper seeks to delineate the historical trajectory of evolution of Dalit women from the pits of degradation to the formation of agency that they embodied today. The title of my paper is The Trauma of Caste, a Historical Trajectory of Experiences, Challenges, and Triumphs through the Dalit women's life writings. The term Dalit itself means broken by caste experiences, broken by horror of enormity of human potential that was lost to this violent system, Hindu caste hierarchy, where lives not fully lived and the souls who never got to sing their full song. Dalits are the outcome of this hierarchy and the belief system that created caste, declared them untouchables and defiling. Yet, Dalit also means resilient. That's a word, the prolonged notion of oppression into resistance in form of literature produced by Dalits themselves. Dalit identity today is shaped by the experiences of their past, experiences of humiliation, indignities of untouchability, ill treatment at the hands of privileged castes, experiences of hunger, poverty, gender discrimination, and so on. Dalits, carrying the generational wound, the wound of caste discrimination, lit the light of hope for the future generation to subvert their inhuman condition, thereby bring justice. Dalits are carrying internal challenges and trauma from the basis of from their life writings. Dalits are still suffering atrocities in the 21st century, although untouchability was abolished in the under the Article 17 of Indian Constitution and the Article 15 prohibits the discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, and birth of place, etc. But yet prejudice against Dalit is prevalent today. Dalit women in particular who are traumatized because of caste, class and gender, their challenges in present terms, forming the agency and forging new alliances with the mainstream in order to overcome the trauma are main focus of the present paper. When we talk about Dalit trauma, it is a systematic oppression based on caste. Tanmoy Soundarajan, in her book The Trauma of Caste, says that trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside. According to her, trauma means the traumatic experiences, explorations of how characters cope with or try to overcome the traumatic experiences of past. Individuals' quest for self-realization because of the consciousness and establishing an identity for themselves is the significant feature of Dalit women's writings. Trauma theory, according to Dictionary of Literary Terms and Literary Theory, focuses on personal trauma and collective trauma. It offers a framework for understanding experiences, overwhelm the coping mechanisms of individuals, and ways that testimony can aid the recovery process. According to this, Dalit women's life writings fits well in this framework, witnessing and enduring the first-hand realities, memories of past experiences, self-reflexivity, questioning of the self, and above all, the healing process makes Dalit women's life writings traumatic. Dalit women writers of present times like Bama, Urmila Pawar, Meena Kanda Semi, Yashika Dutt, and many more are writing Dalit experiences of pain and psychological trauma in different genres. The first Dalit women feminist writer, Baby Kamble, in her autobiography, The Prisons We Broke, writes about her experiences. I quote, "We were like animals, but without tails. We could not be called humans only because we had two legs instead of four," unquote. Kamle's description of daily experiences of humiliation, inhuman treatment, hunger, poverty, and struggle for survival leaves an indelible impression which cannot be forgotten. Such subjugation and ill treatment at the hands of the oppressors wounded the Dalit self. Maya Pandit, the translator of her autobiography, also examines that Prisons We Broke is an expression of protest against the inhuman conditions of existence to which the Hindu caste system had subjected the Dalits for thousands of years. Another significant work is Bama's Kharuku, which is written by a wounded self as a means of healing inward wounds, which Bama herself accepts. In the process of self realization, there is a powerful sense of engagement with history, oppression, and a vision of hope, of change, of equality, justice for Dalits, and to begin to live with honor and respect and love of all humankind. Bamas accepts the fear of being disclosed as she says, I quote, "I would tremble to think how they would react if they realized that I was a Dalit," unquote. I often felt pale and ashamed, except Bama, and she reveals the recovery from the betrayal that she suffers on account of being untouchable in the dominant Hindu society. Sujata Gilda, in another autobiography, Ants Among Elephants, she talks about the fear of rejection or of being betrayal when she says that your caste is your life and your life is your caste, which remains eternal even after death. Yashikadar also talks about the disguised identity that she holds on uh, so that she does not reveal her identity in front of the dominant classes in her coming out as a Dalit. Then Moise Rajan also talks about the trauma and the revealing of truth to the upper caste friends, that how will they react throughout her book, The Trauma of Caste. And this is interesting to see that these individual suffering is the reflection of collective suffering of their communities. The prolonged suffering, as Sharan Kumar Limbale says, is not the pain of anyone.
We request you, the last minute is left, so if you could hurry up.
Yes.
Minute is left, yes.
I'm just winding up, ma'am. Thank you so much. This trauma of caste experiences follows revolt and rejection of the unequal social order for justice and acceptance as a human being. Um, witnessing and survivorship, that is the triumph or that challenges that Dalit women are writing in their through their autobiographies. That is Dalit women's subjectivities as both victims and transgressive agents. The new visibility of Dalit women in the academia and the secular resurgence of caste in public spheres are building solidarity across nations, and they have emerged as survivors and today is aptly known for talking differently, as Sharmila Rege terms them. To conclude, I would like to emphasize Bama's quote here, because the healing, that is still a question for to Dalit identity. Bama says, I quote, "I am like a bird whose wings are broken. I don't know when my wings will heal and gain strength, yet I know I am moving forward slowly, step by step. Even when the political wins and the trauma, even when we political win, but the trauma remains. That is what St. Moses on the Rajan emphasizes in her trauma of caste. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Children. Ekta ma'am, are you there with us, connected?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Ekta, if you could, are you using a presentation?
No, I will present my paper verbally.
Okay, you can go ahead.
A very good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Amity University for giving me an opportunity to present my paper, and my apology for not using a PPT. I am Ekta Anuja Minch, currently a research scholar at Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. My topic is titled as Need for Intersectionality Within Fairy Tales for Children. For most of man's history, a child's intellectual life, apart from immediate experiences within the family, depend on mythical and religious stories and fairy tales. This traditional literature fed the child's imagination and stimulated his fantasizing. Simultaneously, since these stories answer the child's most important questions, they were a major agent of socialization. Literature analysts often uses ideas of Freud, Carl Jung, and Bruno Wittenheim to show how fairy tales can be used to benefit the development of children. One of the many purposes of fairy tale is to teach children to look at unconscious ideas. The development of the child's psyche is positively influenced by what they see and what they read. When children are young, it is literature that carries such information best. I would like to quote Bruno Wittenheim. For a story truly to hold the child's attention, it must entertain him and arouse his curiosity, but to enrich his life, it must stimulate his imagination, help him to develop his intellect, and to clarify his emotions. Be attuned to his anxieties and aspirations, give full recognition to his difficulties, while at the same time suggesting solution to the problems which perturb him. In short, it must at one and the same time relate to all aspects of his personality, and this without belittling, but on the contrary, giving full credence to the seriousness of child's predicaments, while simultaneously promoting confidence in himself and his future. So fairy tales form a very big part of a child's natural upbringing. Not just they attract magic, morals, and escapism, they also profess societal decorums and accepted behaviors. They hold a very fundamental part in child's psychological development. But the question arises that do they really focus on what is right and what is wrong, or they lack certain aspects which contributes to bridging the already existing gaps? The missing intersectionality is evident down the ages in children's literature. The lacking hyper-diverse realities in fairy tales can be traced back and forth from 19th century to the present age. The heteronormative notion, white-skinned narrations, and able bodies outcasting gender diversity, people of color, and disability shows the need to include intersectionality in children's literature. Fairy tales emerge as first literary world across children. So these tales not just encompass stories in pages, but in media as well. Yet the popular culture has left some unavoidable spaces to conquer. And so my present study aims to indicate how intersectionality has left unquestioned in these tales. Literary critics have felt that fairy tales are spiritual exploration and hence the most lifelike since they reveal human life as seen or felt or divided from the inside. If the tales are given the importance to demonstrate the ideals and expectations, then it should also be inclusive of what the society demands. The inaccessibility to the cause is like turning a blind eye to them. Children should have an open platform to see these invisibilities, and therefore there is a need to include intersectionality in fairy tales for children for their overall development. Gender in today's society is a social concept, a term which not only sets the responsibility and roles of humans in society, but also decides the dress code, occupations, choices, rights, and even the dreams of that person. Out of major mediums to learn social roles and responsibility, one known as literature. It has the power to influence a child's identity by making inferences about gender. Children not only read or listen passively, but observe what is being read or told to them and reflect it on their own personality, which often influences their identities. Fairy tales generally portray characters who are straight, white, able-bodied, and cis. There are hardly any characters representing people of color, disabled, trans, and are not straight. These representation questions the very existence of the cultures that children learn in a very early age. Fairy tales serve as the first-hand experience to children, and yet they lack the basic representation of different identities in their narratives. The general notion of beauty applies only to European notion of what is beautiful. Children learn at a very early age that beauty resembles to fair skin. This subjection of beauty with fairness make people of color as ugly, who are not beautiful. European fairy tales that are the most renowned and maximum retold represents their hero as fair. There is a fear in stories like Snow White. If the skin is not young, fair, then it is a drawback. Beauty is seen as good nature and ugliness as something fearsome and villainous. Heroines are depicted with good qualities if they are beautiful. This beauty is envied in the stories and arouses character who are not fair. Differently abled and queer who have bad qualities in them and are also presented to have ultimate fate to bad deed and displacement or to death. Coming down from ages, fairy tales have not much changed. There is still loopholes and gaps and that need to be filled. Therefore, it is important to reflect on books and to bias be reading to them to rectify any gender roles projected in children's book. Gender stereotypes and non-existence of intersectionality is the main concern of my paper. A fairy tale is a literary genre representing in a simple and compact form the universal experiences of mankind, including existential problems and their desired outcomes. It is an important part of most societies' culture. Fairy tales have long been a part of literary culture heritage, but they are not without controversies. One of the most equivocal issues surrounding fairy tales is gender projection in them. Many argue that traditional fairy tales reinforce traditional gender roles. For instance, in many classical fairy tales, women are portrayed as passive and helpless, while men are strong and heroic. I have my paper picked out few tales like Cinderella, Snow White, and Rapunzel, and have talked about how men are projected while the female are seen as a passive character. This perpetuates the idea that women are weak and incapable of taking care of themselves. Rapunzel's long hair serves as a symbol of her femininity and beauty. It reinforces the notion that women's worth lies in their physical appearance. To achieve her dreams, she required aid from a male character. So, stories like these fails to challenge or subvert traditional gender roles. Coming forward to the need of intersectionality is the question arises how disability and differently able bodies are represented in fairy tales. So according to the social model of disability, society is constructed by the people with capabilities for the people with capability, and it is this that makes people with impairments incapable of function. In other words, it is the society that disables impaired people by not employing measures inaccessibility to public spaces, lack of financial support, or segregated schooling, among others, and isolate people with disabilities and make them feel lesser than others and to bring them on the margin. So happy endings do not come to those whose bodies are unnatural, encouraging the assumption that all those whose bodies were different in this day and age must somehow be bereft of happiness. This thinking often leads to the idea that such people might even be choosing this unhappiness because they aren't trying hard enough to overcome their disability. Stories are never stories. These fairy tales we know become the basis of so much romantic thought and feeling and understanding of narrative provide a crucial yet flawed base for understanding how the world works. In order to build a new and better world, we need to move beyond the stories, even beyond their happier Disney counterparts, and embrace a mode of storytelling that celebrates what might be possible not through fate or magic, but through the collective work of acknowledging disability not as a flaw, but simply as another way of being in the world, another way of being that has every right to participate in and be a part of society. This is never the happy ending that we might get in fairy tales, but it's the happy ending that we all deserve. So in conclusion, the study emphasizes how gender binaries and exclusivity of certain norms needs to be dealt in the fairy tales. There should be expulsion of heteronormative structures and inclusion of intersectionality. The idea of race, ethnicity, normalcy should not be a part of these children's stories. Every story should be inclusive of intersectionality. Then only a correct environment could be created for children to learn. The cultural diversity should be developed in early childhood, overall development of personality and psyche, so that the inner insecurities and question of racism, sexism, body shaming can be diminished. Everybody rejecting the ideal structure is beautiful, and there should not be any discrimination on this basis. Therefore, there is a need of intersectionality within fairy tales for children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekta, for your presentation. The questions which will pop up for Ekta's presentation can be posted in the chat box. We will be taking them up after the end of this plenary session. Our next speaker is Mayank Kumar Pant, who's from Kumaon University, Nainital. His paper is titled Voices of Change, the Impact of Female Journalists on Gender Representation in Uttarakhand's Media. Mayank sir, are you there? online connected with us?
Yeah, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Is there a presentation you want to use?
Yeah, ma'am. I have a presentation.
Okay. Yeah, it's visible to us.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. The title of my presentation is Women in Media, Female Journalists and the Fight for Gender Equality in Uttarakhand. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mayank. I am a research scholar at Kumaon University, Nainital, in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. Before starting my presentation, I want to thank my supervisor, Dr. Poonam Bisht, and my HOD, Dr. Girish Ranjan Tiwari, for motivating me and helping me in completing this research work. After that, I want to thank MIT University for giving me the opportunity to present my paper in an international seminar. Before starting my presentation, I want to briefly tell about the idea behind this research. So in 2018, I was working as a journalist with a very well-reputed news organization. They claimed at that time that they had the largest networks of reporters across India. But to my surprise, only 2 out of 10 were women. And after I entered academia, this thought struck in my mind that what might be the reason behind that. And due to this seminar, I got the opportunity to research on that topic. And today I'm presenting that topic in front of you. So let's start with the topic. To look this whole research at a glance, firstly, media influences on gender representation. Positive portrayals drive changes and negative ones reinforces biases. This research focuses on female journalists in Uttarakhand. They challenge gender stereotype while facing professional hurdles. Female journalists experience gender bias and underrepresentation. They advocate for women's empowerment through their work. The study used qualitative interviews with female journalists framed within feminist theory to analyze gender dynamics. The findings of the research highlight the role of female journalists in shaping inclusive media. Positive representation promote women's empowerment. This research aligns with the movement for gender equality in India, and this research calls for more support and policies for female journalists. To start with, I want to introduce this topic to you all. According to the Women's Media Center report, female journalists in India face significant online harassment, reflecting entrenched patriarchal norms that restrict their influence and presence in media. Female journalists in Uttarakhand navigate multiple biases, gender, class, and ethnicity that shape their professional experiences and the content they create, contributing to both women's empowerment and reshaping societal norms. As noted by Kalyani and Linda, women in journalism face a double burden of balancing domestic and professional responsibilities, limiting career growth, particularly in precarious professions like media. Shakuntala Rao emphasizes that female journalists in India are redefining their roles by navigating the intersections of gender, class, and ethnicity, actively negotiating their identities to challenge newsroom hierarchies. According to News Laundry and UN Women, female journalists face entrenched structural challenges, including limited opportunities for advancement and persistent gender discrimination in male-dominant media spaces. These are some facts on global level and national level. Let me start with the global challenges which women face. According to the Women Media Center report, 63% of female journalists globally have faced online harassment, significantly affecting their mental health and work. The IWMF Global Report states that 64% of female journalists worldwide have encountered violence, including physical threats, stalking, and abuse, both from colleagues and external actors. 30% of cases of violence against women journalists globally involve physical assault, leading many to self-censor or leave the profession due to safety concerns. When we talk about challenges in India, as per se, according to News Laundry and UN Women, women make up to only 26% of leadership roles in Indian newsrooms. 53% of women journalists in India report facing gender-based discrimination in the workspace, including unequal pay, limited access to promotions, and exclusion from high-profile assignments. As these are the broader facts which also were highlighted in the study which I did. So these are the major issues which women face. Some of them are online harassment, stalking, unequal pay, exclusion, physical assault, double burden, self-censorship, patriarchy, bias, workspace hostility, and cultural barriers also. So the methodology for this research was qualitative. The research employs a qualitative method to explore the experiences of female journalists in Uttarakhand. This research takes purposive sampling method, and the total number of journalists were 12, which were selected by purposive sampling from diverse media platforms in Uttarakhand, ensuring the inclusion of individuals with relevant experiences. The data collection method was in-depth semi-structural interviews, which focused on gender-based challenges and the unique challenges faced by female journalists, specifically in Uttarakhand. Data collection method was thematic analysis, was used to code and categorize responses, identifying key themes related to gender biases and regional challenges. So let's talk about results and findings. Let me brief all of you about what female journalists in Uttarakhand really are. So, female journalists in Uttarakhand exhibits remarkable resilience as they navigate a male-dominant field with a patriarchal society. They challenge traditional gender roles by pursuing career in journalism, often overcoming significant societal hurdles. Female journalists face the challenge of needing to understand and speak local dialects such as Gadwali and Kumaoni, even when reporting primarily in Hindi or English to effectively connect with their audience. Also, the rugged terrain and remote areas of Uttarakhand present geographical challenges requiring journalists to traverse long distance to cover stories. This is the profile of the respondents. The 12 respondents were taken. Age distribution was 50% age between 18 to 25. The other were split between 26 to 35 and 36 to 45, other 50%. All of the journalists hold postgraduate degree, highlighting the high educational attainment among the female journalists in this region. Also, the majority, 67%, identified as reporters, with other working as editors, TV anchors, sub-editors, content writers, and radios. Let me also tell you that a single journalist has to play all these roles. A reporter has to write stories as well. A reporter has to shoot her videos as well. So these are the combined roles I am talking about in this presentation. Also, experience varied with 42% having over 10 years of experience, and a notable proportion, 33%, reported monthly earnings between 20 and 30,000. Also, the majority worked in Hindi language media with fewer in English or regional language outlet. A significant 67% of the respondents were unmarried and only 25% married, and one respondent divorced. So basically, I asked them two questions. One of them is, what challenges do you face as a female journalist in Uttarakhand, considering the region's unique geographical and cultural context? So these are few responses which I got from them. The issues which respondent number 2 raised was local dialect, traveling long distances in mountainous terrains, and safety concerns. When we go to other respondent, she said, in Uttarakhand, journalism isn't considered suitable for women. Families discourage women from traveling long distances due to safety concerns. To the next respondent, she responded and said, in the field, I often find myself as the only woman among a crowd of men, and trying to secure my space as a journalist in this male-dominated profession is challenging. Respondent 9 and 12 together said, women have always played a powerful role in societal movements. As you can see, this is an image of Chipko Andolan, which is a very prominent Andolan of recent times as well, in which women played the center role. But she, being a journalist, says safety is a significant factor that must be considered in every step we take now. Also, moving forward to other responses, respondent 10 and 11 said cultural attitudes also hinder our work, as journalism is often seen as unsuitable for women. These are the testimonies of all those respondents. Also, the next question, I asked them, can you share the specific gender-based challenges and biases you encountered in your role as female journalists? So these are the challenges that all the women journalists face. First of all, mindset of our male counterparts, unsuitable for covering crimes or political. They male counterparts of these journalists find women journalists unsuitable for covering crime or political news despite their skills and talent. The other respondent raised the issue of working late hours is a challenge due to safety concerns. Very few of the respondents said that their office provides a vehicle for them at late hours to travel back to their home. The third respondent said balancing work and family life is difficult. As we discussed earlier, the financial compensation isn't adequate, making it hard to manage personal and professional responsibilities. This respondent number 4, what she says is very interesting. Networking is male dominant. He raised the concern that the idea of networking is very male dominant. Women face judgment when trying to engage in networking practices that are essential for work. As we all know, and journalism in journalism, you have to create your networks and engage with all kinds of people. But she raised the concern that networking itself is a male dominant thing, and men have this privilege, but women have to put extra efforts to access the same opportunities. Also, the other important key points are women journalists are unfairly judged and pushed through a male dominant space. And when they have to push through a male dominant space, they are unfairly judged. Also, respondent number 7 raised this concern that gender-based challenges persist. I have faced inappropriate behavior, such as male journalists trying to touch me inappropriately or undermine me while getting a soundbite. These are some of the testimonies which I collected. Also, now to further extend this to discussions and conclusion, female journalists in Uttarakhand faced layered challenges shaped by patriarchal norms, gender-based discrimination, and underrepresentation. Drawing from feminist theory and the intersectional feminism, these barriers reflects a glass ceiling rooted in local customs and professional hierarchies. The absence of institutional mechanisms like mentorship or policy enforcement perpetuates inequality, aligning with liberal feminism's critique of existing structures. For women in rural areas, intersectional barriers, gender, geography, and class magnify these struggles. And to conclude, despite systematic obstacles like the gender pay gap, underrepresentation in leadership, and the limited support, female journalists in Uttarakhand are reshaping media narratives on gender equality and social justice. Institutional reforms such as gender equality policies and inclusive training are essential for lasting change. Their resilience is a key to a more equitable media landscape in future. These are the references which I used in this PPT. Also, to conclude my statement, this is a quote by Cookie Roberts, which is a very famous American journalist and author. She said, and I quote, "The power of women in journalism is the ability to change the status quo, to tell stories that need to be told, and to shine a light on the issues that matter." Thank you so much for giving me time. That was my presentation.
Thank you so much, Mayank Kumar Band, for the informative presentation. We'll move on to our next presenter now. Ayush Kapoor and Dr. Ekta Gupta, are you there?
Yes, I'm Ayush Kapoor.
Okay, you may start.
Just a second. I need to share my presentation. अवल अल्लाह नूर रुपाया कुदरत के सब बंदे एक नूर ते सब जग उपजया कौन पले कौन वंदे. Bhakt Kabir in Guru Granth Sahib said that God created the light and then created the human, and the nature gives every human equal. It's the only humans who discriminate amongst them. A very good morning to one and all present here. I, Ayush Kapoor, a final year student of law at Amity Law School, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, feels privileged to present the paper titled Gender Culturalism Transformation through Judicial Activism under the guidance of my mentor, Dr. Ekta Gupta. Starting from introducing the topic, we all know that gender roles in India have been shaped by a rigid patriarchal structure that dictates behavior based on gender identity, marginalizing women, and sexual and gender minorities. The male dominance is so ingrained in the societal expectations of India that it had led to the rejection and prejudice of those who deviate from traditional norms. However, the judiciary in the recent times, from certain decades, has made a significant change uh, due to the judicial activism, and courts have increasingly taken on an activist role by interpreting the constitution to secure the rights of vulnerable groups, including the women and the LGBTQ individuals. The very first thing which comes in the mind when we read the topic is what is gender culturalism. The gender culturalism basically refers to the social norms that prescribe the roles and responsibilities based on the gender, and it goes beyond the biological distinctions, and it encompasses the cultural expectations of masculinity and femininity. It shapes gender roles by defining what is deemed appropriate for the man and the woman in the areas like work division, personal liberties, reinforcing dominant stereotypes about gender behavior and responsibilities. Talking about the impact of cultural norms on gender identities, we can say that sexual roles are very important function of cultural influence in the development of gender, since it defines the acceptable behavior, the dressing code, and the roles that are expected from the each sex. There are several agents through which people are inculcated into these norms, such as family, education, religion, and media. And this whole process of socializing, the whole process of socialization, it legitimates the binary division of gender and gives way to a limited conception of what is appropriate for males and females. When I talk about the historical context of gender norms and the gender rights in India, if I trace back to the ancient texts of India, like the first law book, that is Manusmriti, which is given by the great uh, legal scholar Manu, in that also Manu reinforces the male dominance in the family and society. Then, when India was ruled by Mughals, then by Britishers, again we saw in the pages of the history that everything was dominated by the men, and women were to a certain point subjugated, and the gender minorities, they were never given the power, and they were not given the respect which they deserved. Then when India got independence, we got our constitution, in which we gave the equality under article 14, the non-discrimination provision under article 15, and right to dignified life under article 21. Still we see that discrimination still exists in India, be it on the basis of the caste, be it on the basis of gender. We are not yet in the position that we have got away with the discrimination in India. Still, it is so prevalent and it is so embedded in our nerves that somewhere or other we also do discrimination. Now, what is judicial activism? As I told that my paper will revolve around the judicial activism and the change in gender culturalism. So basically, judicial activism means the activist role which is played by the judiciary. It doesn't mean that the judges come to the road and start protesting. No. But here, the activist role is played by them by the process that they interpret the law not only on the words of the law, which was the conventional interpretation, but now they go beyond the words of the law, and they interpret the laws in such a way that the laws come in conformity of the society, in the of the constitution, and the society is raised above the culture, is raised above the religion. Now the next point is, some people, well, like when I was discussing this topic with my peers in my faculties, everyone gave me one question, that is this thing new? Is the judicial activism something a recent concept? No, the judicial activism is not recent concept. It's just it has evolved with the certain process. Like earlier, the judiciary had the role of restraint. It means they adhere strictly to the laws without challenging the societal norms. However, with the time passed and the society demanded, they got an activist role. Now, what the activist role does? In the activist role, they use the constitutional provisions to challenge the gender inequality, and they advocate for the social justice. Now, the judicial intervention in the rights of LGBTQ, in the rights of marginalized gender, in the rights of women, has been so much prevalent in the society that we see new judgments coming every month in the aspects of LGBTQ or in the aspects of women. Certain landmark judgments which come when we talk about judicial activism and the change in cultural roles of gender are like the very first judgment comes is the Sabrimala judgment. This case is titled as Indian Young Law Association and others versus State of Kerala. In this, what happened that the Sabrimala temple authorities banned the entry of the women aged from 10 years to 50 years on the precondition that they are menstruating women and they themselves being impure will make the premises impure, and this is not allowed in the temple. However, this was challenged on the Article 14, 15, 17, and 25 of the Constitution. Article 14 talks about basically the right to equality. 15 talks about the non-discrimination. 17 talks about the prohibition of untouchability. And Article 25 talks about the freedom of religion. The Supreme Court came with the majority of 4:1, in which they declared that this ban was unconstitutional and it violated the Articles 14, 17, and 15 of the Constitution. The court had also emphasized that the religious freedom which is provided under Article 25, it, it could not infringe anyone's individual rights, and the exclusion which was based on gender here was illegitimate. The very strange point which came in this judgment was that the only women judge of the bench, Justice Indu Malhotra, she dissented from the majority and argued that the religious practices should not be interfered with unless there was a clear violation of constitutional rights. The next case was Shani Shignapur case. In this case also the same thing happened, that basically Shani Shignapur is a shrine which is dedicated to Lord Shani in Maharashtra. What happened in this case, that the women were not allowed to enter the inner sanctum on the same point that the menstruating women will make the premises impure. Then this practice faced growing criticism, and there was a protest in 2016 which was led by Bhumata Brigade.
Are you sure in the last minute? So if you could kindly speed up the.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. In Shani Shignapur case also, the court held that it is violative of Article 14 and 15. The same thing happened in Haji Ali Dargah case. The only thing in this was that in the other cases, it was from the time immemorial that the practice was followed. But here in this case, the practice was followed after 2011. And again, the court held that this was violative of Article 14, 15, and 25. The next case comes as National Legal Service Authority versus Union of India. In this case, the court gave the recognition to the third gender, which are the transgender individuals, and said that calling them as third gender was unconstitutional, and they gave them the fundamental rights. The next thing, the last case, which is a recent case, it was Navteej Singh Johar versus Union of India. In this case, the court, on pretext of Article 14, 15, and 19, decriminalized the Section 377 of IPC, in which they decriminalized the same-sex sexual intercourse, and because on the point that it was fostering homophobia and denying fundamental rights to the LGBTQ communities. Concluding my presentation, I would like to state that the judicial activism has acted as a catalyst for the change, and still, no doubt, the judicial activism is acting a catalyst for change, and it is bringing the judgments which are for the progressive growth of society. But still, we need the cultural transformation, because people are still not ready to accept, and the mentality of people has to be changed, and we have to be very accepting towards the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arun, for your presentation. If there are any questions, we will be taking it at the end of the entire presentation. So it will be posted in the chat box. We now go towards our next presenter, Tamanna Sheikh. Tamanna is from Sri Padmavati Mahila Vishwavidyalaya, Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh. Her paper is titled Picture Fiction, a tool to teach gender sensitization. Tamanna, are you there connected with us?
Hello, ma'am. Yes, I'm here.
So, ma'am, if you could kindly, is there a presentation you want to share?
Yes, I want to share. Honorable delegates, dear participants, a very good morning to everyone. I'm Tamanna Sheikh. I'm a research scholar at Sri Padmavati Mahila Vishwavidyalayam.
If you could kindly make it to a full screen mode because
Yes, ma'am. One second.
it will be better.
I hope it's visible to everyone.
Yeah, it's visible.
Thank you. The title of my paper is Picture Fiction, a Tool to Teach Gender Sensitization. My paper tries to investigate how picture books can challenge the traditional gender stereotypes that exist in our society and promote gender equality with empathy. It also focuses on identifying the key elements in books that can be effectively used to convey gender sensitive messages, especially among children, in order to change or improve their attitudes and behaviors. It also tries to investigate how exposure to picture books with diverse narratives and beautiful illustrations can challenge traditional notions of gender and promote empathy and understanding. So the prime motive of literature and is the upliftment and elevation of human conditions from where it is to the next higher level. Literature is has no such exception. What does literature do? And it teaches in order to change the society. So when literature with these attributes, if it can be children from a very the children do form their value system in their very initial formative years. If it is introduced, if all the values are introduced to children in a very young age, they are sure to carry it into their adulthood. So by exposing young children to gender sensitization, we can help them imbibe qualities and values like empathy and respect. So when children are exposed to gender sensitization, they appreciate diversity and inclusivity. It also helps in reducing future instances of gender-based violence and harassment. We are sure to create communities that are more aware and proactive about addressing gender-related challenges. So what are these picture books? Now, how do we introduce this concept of gender sensitization to young children? It is here where picture books come into the scene. So what picture books are? They're also called as picture fiction. Picture books are usually for children who are preschoolers, who are in their primary sections. The range from age 3 to 7. So what these picture books do, what these picture books have is they have beautiful illustrations with a simple and a short story with a very simple vocabulary and language. So apart from learning language and vocabulary, a child also learns certain values and morals from these picture books. So, for example, to discuss some of the examples, some of the popular picture books which deal with gender sensitization, there is a picture book called Amma's Toolkit. So it is a picture book where we have where we come across a mother, a small family, a mother, a father, and two young girls. Now, when the mother returns from outside to home, she sees that there is water all over the house and the water is rushing onto the street also. When she tries to find out what has happened, the children tell her that there was a tap broken by their father. Now, what does this mother do? She rushes into the bathroom, she opens her toolkit and she immediately tries to fix that tap. And she solves the problem. So here we come across a woman who is self-sufficient and who is also depicted as a problem solver. In one more picture book called Ammachi's Amazing Machines, there is an old woman and who lives with her grandson who asks her to prepare coconut burfi for him. So both these grandmother and grandson, they together do everything, right from breaking the coconut, grating it, cooking it, cutting it into pieces, etc. So in this entire process, we see women, I mean, in the first picture book that I mentioned, and also in the second one, we come across women who have broken the traditional gender stereotypes by doing something that is not attributed to them according to the society. For example, handling or operating tools is generally considered to be a man's job at home. But here we see women who are handling who are handling these tools very effectively. So what do kids understand when they read these kind of picture books? They understand that there are not the domestic chores are not confined to a particular gender, and anyone in the family can do anything. The next book that I would like to discuss is Bilal Cooks Dal. In this picture book, we see a father who teaches his young son Bilal and also his other friends how to cook dal. So here we see a man in the kitchen cooking and teaching the same thing to his boy, to his son. Even in the next picture book, Sadiq wants to stitch. It is where the protagonist Sadiq, who lives in Kashmir with his mother, he loves stitching because it is traditionally Kashmir is known for the Kashmir shawls and all that. So we come across a mother who is stitching, and due to the absence of father, the child has to tend sheep. But in this picture book, we see the child displaying an interest in learning to stitch. And initially, the mother doesn't understand him, or the mother rejects it, saying, "It is not a man's job. It is not a boy's job to stitch. Your job is to only tend to the sheep." But eventually, she understands his interest, and he even supports him and teaches him how to stitch. So through all these examples, we can say that picture books can be very effective in teaching gender sensitization. So finally, I would like to conclude that if we want to see a society where there is equality and equity, imbibing where every citizen of this world imbibes the values of empathy and respect, it is necessary. The best way is to teach this gender sensitization right from the very childhood, especially through picture books. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamana ma'am. We will be taking the questions, if any, at the end of the plenary session. Our next presenter is Shri Varshini S. from Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. Her paper is titled Study of Gender, Trauma and Resilience in Anita Desai's Fasting Feasting. Shri Varshini ma'am, are you there connected with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, your PPT is visible to us. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. And my presentation is titled with a study of gender, trauma, and resilience in Anita Desai's Fasting and Feasting. I'll explore how Desai addresses gender roles, trauma, and resilience in the novel. And with the author introduction, I'd like to start with Anita Desai was born in 1937 to a German mother and an Indian father. Her multicultural background is reflected in her works, which often explores themes like gender roles and cultural conflict. Like Fasting and Feasting is one of her most celebrated novels, highlighting Desai's unique narrative style and psychological depth. And coming back to Fasting and Feasting's overview, it focuses on two main characters like Uma in India and Aruna's sister in America. The novel contrasts traditional Indian values with modern American setting, revealing how both cultural contexts impose emotional weight, especially in terms of gender expectations and trauma. And when coming to gender dynamics across cultures, Uma's story in India reflects patriarchal oppression with her autonomy stripped away by family control. Meanwhile, Arun's sister in America faces subaltern societal expectations, showing that gender oppression exists in different forms across cultures. And when coming to the themes of trauma and resilience, Uma's trauma stems from emotional neglect and societal constraints, while Arun struggles with cultural alienation in America. Both characters show resilience, though in different ways. Uma through quiet rebellion and Arun through enduring the pressures of navigating two cultures. When coming to the character analysis of Uma's life is shaped by patriarchal control, and she gives up her dreams for her family, but she finds small moments of rebellion, such as in her love for reading and reflecting her subtle resilience. But when coming to the Arun system, she faced in America, and Arun sister's emotional neglect and societal pressures focus on her appearance and behavior. Like her experience mirrors Uma's, showing that gender trauma transcends culture. And here, memory acts as a narrative device. Like Desa uses memory to explore her character's trauma, wherein Uma's memories highlight the loss of potential, while Arun's memories reveals cultural dislocation, connecting the past and present to deepen our understanding of their emotional traumas. When this is compared to traumatic bond theory explains the emotional ties that develop between the individuals and their abusive relationships. This is evident in Uma's relationship with her family, with her parents especially, and Arun's sister's emotional struggles, highlighting the complexities of family operation. Like in fasting and feasting, traumatic bonding is most evident in the relationship between the characters of Uma and her parents, particularly with her father. Like Uma's life is heavily controlled by her father, who decides the course of her life, like including the denying of her education, personal freedom. Although she suffers under these oppressive conditions, she continues to feel obligated to her family. And her mother, though emotionally detached, reinforces these expectations, creating an environment where Uma remains entrapped by familial duty and obligations. Similarly, in the American context, Arun's sister also experiences a subtle form of traumatic bonding. Though her situation seems different, the emotional neglect and the societal pressures she faces in America create a similar attachment. Like her family expectations regarding her appearance and behavior confine her, like leading her experience emotional disconnection, yet still unable to break free from these family traumas. In coming to the comparative analysis of the cultural setting of these two characters, Uma's overt operation in India contrast with the more subtle subjugation of Arun's sister in America. Both women face restrictions shaped by their cultural context, yet they show resilience in navigating these challenges. So, to conclude this, fasting and feasting is a powerful exploration of trauma and resilience, like revealing how cultural and societal expectations shape each individuals. Like the novel also prompts us to think critically about the pervasive nature of gendered oppression and the resilience it fosters. Like the future directions and scopes for this research is to explore the gender trauma in these as other works and compare traumatic bonding across cultures and adopt interdisciplinary approaches to deepen our understanding of gender trauma and literature. Thank you.
Plenary session. Our next speaker is Shreya Dev, who's a postgraduate student in Amity Institute of English Studies and Research, Amity University, Patna. Her paper is titled A Post-Human Inferno, Peeling Off Layers of Post-Human Transhumanism in Dan Brown's Inferno.
Peeling of layers of post-human transhumanism in Dan Brown's Inferno. So as we know that Dan Brown is a very famous contemporary writer, and his books are one of those topics which are very famous. Am I audible here? Yes. Yes, you're audible. Which is very favorite of many movie directors because his novels are very thrilling. It has hunt, it has cryptic codes and whatnot. So today I'm taking up the novel Inferno. And I will be focusing on the written text, the novel only, because the movie has obviously taken away the essence. So all the focus will be on the text itself. So my presentation will follow as first introduction, then a brief over methodology I have used, and discussion, and then conclusion. So first I will give a brief about the plot of Dan Brown's Inferno. So he creates a narrative in Inferno that blends historical, technological, and philosophical elements. Historical in the sense that he uses idea of Dante's Divine Comedy in his novel, and technological in the sense that there is attributes of transhumanism in this novel, and philosophical in the sense that we do have the symbolism of Catholic philosophy and Catholic symbols in the novels, which is spread across throughout the whole narrative. So hence it is philosophical elements as well. So the story follows Robert Langdon, a Harvard professor who must solve a mystery involving a plague designed to sterilize a large portion of population by Bertrand Zobrist. So Bertrand Zobrist is the antagonist, he's a transhumanist, and he is very much concerned about the rising overpopulation in this whole world. So he believes that a method or a solution he actually develops to check overpopulation, and that is creation of a bioweapon, which when exploded will change or will actually affect 1/3 of the population and make them sterile forever. So he feels that no procreation, so no overpopulation. And the interesting thing is that the transhuman antagonist actually succeeds in his intention. The bioweapon does explode in underwaters of Hagia Sophia, Turkey. So, and the Robert Langdon is the protagonist who is always hired by Dan Brown in his novel to go on a quest to stop any antagonist from performing his intention. But interestingly, this is the first novel of Dan Brown where Robert Langdon actually fails to stop the antagonist attitudes. So why does he fail? Maybe there is some message Dan Brown wants to give out. And the message will be something now which we can resonate with our current times. Because when we reminisce our COVID-19 period, quarantine period, we had the alleged idea that there was some bioweapon which exploded in China and it spread across the world and it created the COVID-19 virus. So there is something which will resonate in this novel. The incident is quite similar. Though it was written in 2013, but when I was reading it during COVID-19, I resonate this idea. So the main focus of this paper will be on the character of Sienna Brooks. Now, who is Sienna Brooks? In this novel, she is a woman who has this attraction towards the transhumanist philosophy, and she advocates for that. Though in the initial phase of the novel, she is the one who actually helps Langdon find where the bioweapon is located. She's like, no, we should stop it. We should not let it explode. It is not good for the world. But later we find that she's actually an ally of the antagonist Bertrand Robris, and her question and her intentions are questionable. So, but my main focus will be on Sienna Brooks because alongside because she represents the positioning of a woman in a technological world, and Dan Brown actually calls her as a new breed of thinkers. So the novel draws a lot more from the historical Black Death of 1348, the Eurocentric humanism, and the idea of Renaissance. So methodology which I have used is discourse analysis. I will be analyzing the spoken and written and maybe presupposition languages present in the novel. And my research tool will be theories of post-humanism propounded by Donna Haraway in Cyborg Manifesto and Rosie Bedrotti in her essay, The Post-Human. So I believe that to understand my paper, there are four key terms, and if you just have a basic understanding of that, then you will be able to follow the presentation in a rather lucid manner. So first is transhumanism. So what is transhumanism? Julian Huxley, brother of Aldous Huxley, the famous writer of the Brave New World, popularized the idea of transhumanism in his 1957 essay, Transhumanism. It is this same idea which advocates for the enhancement of human condition by developing and making available sophisticated technologies. And if you focus on the novel, the example of transhumanism is definitely going to be the antagonist Bertrand Robris and her ally Sienna Brooks, because they advocate for the explosion of a bioweapon, which is something which is very inclusive of advocating technology in biosciences. Next is post-humanism, coined by Inha Hassan. The ideology is a shift in perspective, expanding the discussion beyond the human-centered approach of Renaissance humanism. There was a plague in 1348, and after that we have Renaissance, and Renaissance focused on the human-centered idea of the world, and the attention shifted from God, church, and Catholicism to a more centered approach on man and their feelings and their ideas and their existence, and not the existence of God and Catholic and or the divine and the miracles. So now we have this post-human feminism. So now that we have understood the idea of post-humanism, the post-human feminism is something where the feminist idea actually focuses on what was taught during the time of the humanism. That the idea shifted on a man, that it is also called humanism. But who is this man? And what human are they talking about? Are they talking about Homo sapiens collectively? Or are they talking about the male human? Because if Renaissance actually advocated for the inclusion of all the humans in the society, but since time immemorial, we see women lagging behind. So what was this humanism? Homo sapiens all together, just male humans. So this is the question which actually is critiqued by Rosie Bedrotti and Donna Haraway. And cyborg is introduced, the idea of cyborg was introduced by Donna Haraway in her 1985 essay, Cyborg Manifesto. She explains that cyborg is a hybrid entity that translates binaries of male, female, human, animal, and human and non-human. So I finally come to my analysis part. This time. So first of all, how Sienna embodies the characteristics of post-human feminism. So we know about the Gorthugian man, drawn by the famous Leonardo da Vinci. So Rosie Bertolli in her work actually brings into question this image of the Gorthugian man, and she questions who is this man on whom the whole Eurocentric idea of humanism centered. So she says that this man is allegedly the abstract ideas man as a symbol of classical humanity and is very much male of this species. And this man and this human is obviously male. He is cisgender, white, European, and very able-bodied, which immediately positions the women of color or any people for that matter who are of color and the European and who are the Orientals and who are not able-bodied as inferior or the other. So there is this hierarchical idea of humanism which was established in the Eurocentric Renaissance ideology. The plan of bioweapon was primarily designed by Bertrand Sobris, the white able-bodied Eurocentric man. However, by the end of the novel, we see it is actually Sienna who is being accepted by the WHO to reflect on the idea of transhumanism as and when the bioweapon has already exploded. So we see that in this new renaissance or in this new humanism, we actually see that there is a woman standing who is also a transhumanist, who is advocating for non-binary aspects of any reason or ideology or principle. So this is like a subverting of the humanism of the Renaissance and creation of a new humanism during the time after the explosion of the bioweapon. And it is also said that by Donna Haraway in the Cyborg Manifesto that this post-human feminism is actually a thing which has materialized from the Cold War. So this symbol is very concrete because we also see that Sienna Brooks had traveled to Manila, Philippines, and she was volunteering there. And there she saw that the condition of humanity, the predicament of humanity was very, people were malnourished, prostitution was very high, children were forced to work at a very early age. So there she had the idea that how capitalism has actually broken every people in the society and the war of ideologies which big nations like America and Soviet Union actually do among themselves is somewhere affecting the people who are not in so higher position in the world politics. Yes. So it was the very time when Sienna thought that no, I have to do something and there should be an approach to justice for these kind of people. So the post-human feminism or the cyborg, the post-human critics say that they are actually product which materializes from the condition of Cold War. This connection can be drawn during the episode when Sienna went to Philippines for volunteering work and was exhausted to see the predicament of humanity there. And concern for social justice in Sienna fits well when Haraway says, and I quote, that combines competence, that post-humanist feminism combines competence in contemporary biosciences and information depth with a firm program of social justice. So this is how I have analyzed the character of Sienna Brooks as someone who is advocating from post-human transhuman feminism. And on this note, I conclude my presentation. But there is something I would like to quote from Rosie Bertolli, and that is, she wrote this in the post-humanism. To the character of Sienna, reclaims the notion of embodied beyond biological determinism, viewing the female body as a technologically meditative entity that is capable of agency, transformation, and creativity. So Sienna embodies this reclamation in this time of new transhumanistic renaissance. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shreya. If there are any questions, it will be posted in the chat box, which will be taken up at the end of the plenary session. Our last presenter is Dr. Manu Bharti. But before we move to Manu Bharti, I would just like to, we already had one of our presenters who was not present at the time allotted. If you are connected with us, kindly get in touch so that we can have your presentation at the end after Dr. Bharti. We now proceed towards Dr. Manu Bharti from Ranchi Women's College, Ranchi University. Her paper is titled The Invisible Woman in War, a rethinking of war narratives. Ma'am, are you here with us?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Is there a presentation you want to share?
Yes. I'll just share my screen. Is my screen being shared?
Yeah, your screen is being shared.
Okay. Just a minute. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Manu Bharti from Ranchi Women's College, and the topic of my today's presentation is The Invisible Women in War, a rethinking of war narratives. I would like to start my presentation with a poem by Robert Graves, which is titled as A Dead Bosch. So it goes like this: To you who had read my songs of war and only hear of blood and fame, I'll say, you have heard it said before, war's hell, and if you doubt, the same. So now when we talk about war narratives, it is basically, how men went onto the battlefields, how it was about their valor, their strength, and how women are the side characters, looking after the family, waiting for the men folks to return. But this paper is an attempt to radically and fundamentally question and revise the way we view women's role in war. After all, it is not only bullets alone that win the battle. This distrust on women's physical strength is so much so that when women rose up against Taliban, Zabinullah Mujahideen made a comment. He said, "Women will never pick up guns against us. They are helpless and forced by the defeated enemy. They can't fight." So women are supposed to be the caregivers, the softer ones. So Strawbergs and Gentry, they talked about violent women, and about violent women they said that violent women are mothers, monsters, or whores, because it is not expected of women to be violent. So he said the mother narrative describes women's violence as a way of taking care of men and a form of nurturing. The monster narrative eliminates blame from women by casting them as insane and denying them as real women or even human. Finally, the whore narrative describes women's violence as driven by a sexual dependence on men and an erotic dysfunction. By portraying violent women as a flaw in humanity, it protects the peaceful woman image and prevents accountability for violent actions. The first section, if it's visible, talks about, just a minute. The first section talks about women as mothers. So mother in no way is synonymous with being weak, and it is represented in the character of Vianney by Christine Hanna's The Nightingale. So Christine Hanna's The Nightingale is a story of two sisters during World War II. So Vianney, being a mother, becomes the epitome of strength when she goes to any extent to save her children. Like any normal mother, in the beginning of the novel, she tries to, like she's living in a Nazi-occupied France, and she tries to listen to the Nazi government to save her daughter. But eventually she realizes that she cannot let her daughter grow up into a world where people do not fight against injustice. So from there on, her role changes from being a mother to a warrior. Vianney's statement that represents all the wives and mothers during war. So there's a statement by Vianney in the novel wherein she says, "Men tell stories, women get on with it. For us, it was a shadow war. There were no parades for us when it was over, no medals or mentions in history books. We did what we had to during the war, and when it was over, we picked up the pieces and started our lives over." The next section talks about rape during war. And as Christina Lamb has said, rape is the cheapest weapon known to man. So sexual violence has been used as a weapon of war throughout history in order to showcase dominance, military indiscipline, hatred, or gender superiority. During World War II, millions of women were sexually abused while the actual numbers still remain unrecorded. Mass rape was used as genocide for ethnic cleansing, especially in Nazi concentration camps. where women belonging to the so-called racially inferior ethnic group were systematically raped by the enemy soldiers to wipe off the inferior race. According to the records, at least 34,140 European women were forced to prostitution during the German occupation of their countries, along with concentration camp female prisoners. This novel of discussion, The Nightingale, as I said, by Christine Hanna, has the rape of Vianney mentioned in the novel. But this rape that happens, this becomes the epitome of her physical strength, of her mental strength, because when that rape happens, she allows it to happen just in order to save a child. Okay. And when the husband returns from war, when her husband actually returns from war, her first instinct is to share it with her husband. But rape is one crime where the blame always falls on women. So she knows it's not her fault, yet she knows how people view rape as woman's fault always. So it's mentioned it wasn't her fault what had happened to her. She believes that, but she didn't think fault mattered in a thing like this. The next section talks about women as warriors. Thousands of women joined war in various capacities. They worked as tank drivers, spies, pilots, snipers, radio operators, etc. In this regard, Pyle commented, these girls lived like men, fought their lives like men, and alas, some of them died like men. In this regard, Erica Roberts' An Invisible Woman, there's a novel called An Invisible Woman, where an American woman lives in a Nazi-occupied France, and what she does to save the French women, the French people, and even the Jewish children from the atrocities of the Nazis, that's mentioned in this novel. Now, when we talk about World War II, we cannot forget the issue of anti-Semitism. In this regard, there's a poem, The Butterfly, written by Friedman Pavel. Friedman Pavel was actually one of, he lived in that concentration camp. So through this poem, he's narrating his experience. So he says, if you can see, quote, for 7 weeks, I have lived in here, pent up inside this ghetto, but I found my people here. The dandians called to me, and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly. That butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here in the ghetto. Anti-Semitism, as we know, is the prejudice or hatred or unfair discrimination towards the Jews. It has existed throughout history, but it gained momentum during Hitler's, during the World War II, during Hitler's rule. Between 1939 to 1945, about 5.7 million Jews were exterminated in Nazi concentration camps through overwork or prolonged starvation. Both the novels that I have talked about, The Nightingale by Christine Hanna and An Invisible Woman by Erica Roper, mentions the condition of Jews and what these women did. Like they did whatever they could to save these Jewish people from the atrocities of Germans. So if I make a conclusion, war narratives we have to understand it's not only about what men did during war. We cannot undermine their efforts, but women had a lot more role to play than being the mere caregivers. We also need to understand that women had a lot more at stake because it was women's responsibility to look after the children, to look after the family. It was women's responsibility to keep the home as it is when the men folks returned and give them the same home they left behind. And also, women had a lot more at stake. In An Invisible Woman, Virginia Hall says that if I'm caught being a woman and if I'm lucky, I'll be killed. If not, we understand the atrocities, the level of atrocity a woman can go through if she's caught. So the stories of war must include women, not just as peripheral actors, but as main characters. And their invisibility, as I have mentioned it, the invisible women in war, it was their strength because, as I said, they had to cater to their children's need also, protect their children also, and then also contribute towards, towards the political battle that the country was going through. So that's it from my side. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bharti, for your presentation. We'll wait for another 1 or 2 minutes. Ma'am, you can, yeah, get back to your own screen. This is for all the presenters. We'll take the last minute to wait for the questions to pop up in the chat box. If there are any questions, of course. We have no questions as of now. So we would like to thank all our presenters for connecting with us and providing your presentations. We will now be disconnecting from this particular plenary track and moving on towards our other tracks. And also there's a kind invitation to all our presenters to join in for the valedictory session. The Zoom link for that has been mentioned already. The timings have also been mentioned, so you can join us later in the evening for the valedictory. Thank you so much, everybody.
Leave.